The sky was dark as the alien ships descended, their metallic bodies cutting through the air like giant predators hunting their prey. On Earth, the human forces were readying themselves for what would be the last stand. Captain Jace stood at the front of a small resistance team, staring at the looming ships in the distance. He had seen war before, but nothing like this. The alien fleet, led by Commander Zarin, was like nothing the world had ever faced. Zarin's species had conquered countless planets, leaving nothing but destruction in their wake. Earth, with all its advancements and fighting spirit, was next. But Jace wasn't going to give up without a fight. He clenched his fist, the cold air biting at his skin. He knew this would be a battle for survival, not just for him, but for the future of the entire human race. As the first wave of ships landed, explosions shook the ground. The alien forces stormed the cities, their weapons powerful enough to melt buildings with a single shot. Jace and his team were among the few who had managed to survive the initial attack. They had managed to gather a small group of survivors in a hidden base, hoping to regroup and strike back. But they were running out of time. The alien forces were relentless, and their numbers seemed to grow by the minute. Jace's team had no chance of winning through brute force. But they had one thing that the aliens didn't. They knew the terrain. Jace's plan was simple but risky. He would use guerrilla tactics, strike when the enemy least expected it, and hope for the best. The humans had nothing left to lose. As Jace looked around at his team, he saw the same determination in their eyes. They weren't going to give up. Not now. Not ever. The sound of alien ships overhead echoed through the valley as Jace's team moved into position. The tension was unbearable. They had to wait for the right moment, but every second felt like an eternity. Jace checked his watch. The countdown had begun. The team's weapons were ready. The plan was in place. And now, they just had to wait. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the ground, and Jace's heart skipped a beat. His team sprang into action, running for cover as the alien forces descended from the sky. The battle had begun. Jace's pulse raced as he watched the alien soldiers move with deadly precision. They were well-trained, with advanced weapons that made them nearly invincible. But the humans were used to fighting on their own terms. Jace's team had one advantage. They knew how to fight for survival. As the alien forces advanced, Jace gave the signal. His team sprang into action, using the cover of the terrain to their advantage. They fired their weapons, hitting several of the aliens, but the enemy was quick to retaliate. The air was thick with smoke and the sound of gunfire. Jace's team moved quickly, keeping their heads down as they fired back. But it wasn't enough. The alien forces were too powerful. They were losing ground fast. Then something unexpected happened. The sound of a powerful engine roared through the air, and a massive alien ship appeared, its hull gleaming in the light of the exploding buildings. Jace's heart sank. This was it. This was the end. He knew there was no way they could win against such overwhelming power. But there was one thing he hadn't expected. The ship stopped. It hovered above the ground, and a single figure emerged from the hatch. It was Commander Zarin. The alien leader stood tall, his imposing figure casting a long shadow over the battlefield. His armor was sleek and reflective, his face hidden behind a helmet that radiated an eerie glow. He stood there for a moment, surveying the scene before turning his gaze toward Jace. The resistance leader's heart pounded in his chest. He knew the stories of Zarin's conquests. The alien was ruthless, feared by all. No one had ever defeated him, not in battle, not in negotiation. Zarin had destroyed entire civilizations without a second thought. But now, for the first time, he was facing humanity. Zarin's voice echoed through the battlefield, amplified by his ship's speakers. "You are fools," he said, his tone cold and detached. "Your planet is mine. Surrender now, and I will allow you to live. Refuse, and I will wipe your species from existence. You have no hope." Jace stood tall, his eyes locked on the alien commander. He knew what was coming next, But he wasn't about to back down. He had seen too much, lost too many people to let fear control them now. He took a step forward, his voice calm but steady. "We'll never surrender," Jace said, his words carrying over the battlefield. "You may have advanced technology, Jaren, but you've underestimated humanity. We don't give up. We fight until the end." Zaren's expression remained unreadable, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Maybe surprise, maybe frustration. He had expected this resistance, but the human's resolve was stronger than he anticipated. Jaren's gaze shifted to his troops, and for a moment, there was a tense silence. Then, without warning, the commander did something unexpected. He dropped to his knees, his head bowing in a gesture of submission. Jace blinked, confused. He had expected a battle, an all-out assault, but not this. The alien commander, who had killed billions without a second thought, was kneeling before him, begging for mercy. "Please," Jaren's voice trembled, a hint of fear creeping into his words. "You don't understand. I am not asking for mercy. I am begging for it. Spare me, and I will leave your world in peace." Jace stood frozen, his mind racing. Was this some kind of trick? Was the commander trying to manipulate him? He didn't know what to make of it. Jaren, the mighty conqueror, reduced to begging for mercy. It made no sense, but something deep within Jace told him this was no trick. There was something else going on. Jace felt a strange sensation wash over him, a mix of disbelief and anger. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Jaren, the alien who had threatened to wipe out humanity, was begging for his life. And yet, Jace couldn't bring himself to feel sorry for him. He wasn't the one who had destroyed his world, taken his friends, and ripped apart his life. Jace took a deep breath, stepping closer to the commander. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The human captain's lips curled into a smirk, and he let out a short, bitter laugh. "Mercy?" Jace scoffed. "You think you deserve mercy after everything you've done? After everything your kind has done?" Jaren's head remained bowed, his shoulders shaking. "I never wanted this," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the sounds of the battle raging around them. "I thought I was doing what was right. But now, I see the truth. I see how wrong I was. Please, give me a chance to make it right." Jace's laughter was cold. "You had your chance. You had countless chances to do the right thing, but you chose destruction. You chose to take lives without hesitation. Now you want mercy. I'm not the one you should be asking for that. You've already taken everything from us." The human captain took a step back, his face hardening. "If you want mercy, Jaren, you're asking the wrong person." For a brief moment, the battlefield went silent. The sounds of war faded as the two leaders stood locked in a tense standoff. The aliens, unsure of what to do, looked to their commander. And in that moment, the entire fate of Earth seemed to hang in the balance. Would Jace give in to mercy, or would humanity show Jaren what it meant to mess with the wrong species? The answer, as Jace knew, would be determined by what happened next. The human race would not go quietly into the night, and Commander Jaren would learn, in time, that humanity was not to be underestimated. The battle was just beginning. Jace kept his eyes on Jaren. The alien commander still knelt in the dirt, surrounded by smoke and fire. His soldiers stood frozen, watching their leader beg before a human. Jace couldn't believe what he was seeing. This alien had led the invasion, killed millions, and burned entire cities. Now he was on his knees, shaking like a man who had lost everything. Something about the sight felt wrong. Jace had seen fear before, but not in someone like Jaren. There was more to this, something the commander wasn't saying. Behind Jace, his team stayed alert. A few aimed their rifles at Jaren, waiting for the order to shoot. One of the younger soldiers whispered, "Captain, what's happening? Why's he begging?" Jace didn't answer right away. His mind was working fast. Was this a trick? A distraction? Or was the alien truly afraid? Jace stepped forward, standing over Jaren. You said you don't want this war, he said. But you started it. You brought death to our world. Why are you suddenly scared now? Geron lifted his head slowly. His face, now visible without the helmet, looked different than Jace expected. It wasn't cold or cruel. It looked tired, worn, like a man who had seen too many battles and carried too many regrets. I was wrong, Geron said quietly. I thought your species would be like the others we conquered. Weak, easy to crush. But humans, you're different. You fight with everything you have. You fight even when all hope is gone. That scares me. Jace narrowed his eyes. That scares you. Geron nodded. Yes. I've led armies across 10 galaxies. I've seen creatures with strength far beyond yours. But none of them fought like this. None of them had this fire. You don't stop. Even when you're losing, you don't give up. Jace didn't know how to respond. He had never thought about what made humans different. All he knew was that surrender was never an option. He looked around at the destroyed buildings, the black smoke in the sky, and the lifeless bodies in the rubble. You should have thought about that before you attacked us. I know, Geron said. That's why I'm begging now. I know I've lost. I just want to live. Jace turned away, thinking. His team waited for his orders. Everyone expected him to finish the commander right there. It would have been easy, but something held him back. Maybe it was the fear in Geron's eyes, or maybe it was the strange feeling growing inside his chest, a mix of anger and something else. Curiosity. Why did you invade Earth? Jace asked suddenly. Geron paused. Because we needed it. My people are dying. Our home is no longer safe. We've burned too many planets, and now we're paying the price. Earth was supposed to be a fresh start. Jace laughed once, bitterly. So you destroy your own world, and then come here to take ours. We had no choice, Geron said. At least, that's what I believed. Until now. The wind blew ash across the ground. The sound of distant gunfire echoed in the background. But for a moment, everything felt still. Jace's mind was spinning. Part of him wanted to believe Geron. Another part wanted to pull the trigger and end it. But something didn't sit right. Geron wasn't just afraid of dying. He was afraid of something else. You're not telling me everything, Jace said. There's more, isn't there? Geron didn't answer at first. Then he whispered, You're right. There is something else. Something coming. Jace stepped closer. What do you mean? There's a reason I invaded Earth so quickly, Geron said. It wasn't just for land or resources. I was running from something. Something worse than me. Jace frowned. Worse than you. Geron looked up at the sky. They're hunters. They follow the scent of war. When they find a battlefield, they feed on the chaos. They destroy both sides. No one survives. Jace felt a chill run down his spine. You're saying another enemy is coming? Geron nodded. Yes. And they're already on their way. I was trying to build a stronghold on Earth to protect my people. And yours. Now it made more sense. Geron hadn't come just to conquer. He had come to hide. To prepare. But even so, he had destroyed too much. His choices had brought pain and death. Still, the idea of another enemy, one even worse than Geron, was terrifying. Jace took a deep breath. He looked at his team. Some of them were still ready to fire. Others looked confused. They had been fighting Geron's forces for weeks. Now he was saying he was trying to save them. I need proof, Jace said. You say something worse is coming. Show me, or this conversation is over. Geron nodded. I can show you. But we need to go to my ship. It has the data. The recordings. I kept them hidden because I was afraid your kind would never believe me. Jace hesitated. Trusting Geron felt dangerous. But if what he said was true, then Earth might be in even greater danger than before. Jace gave a short nod. One wrong move, and you're dead. Understand? I understand, Geron said. slowly rising to his feet. Jace ordered 2 soldiers to stay close to the alien commander. They marched through the ruined city, past burning buildings and crushed vehicles. Smoke filled the air, and every step felt heavy. They reached the alien ship, massive and silent, like a sleeping beast. Jace stared at it. It looked like it had been built for war, not safety. Inside, the halls were dark and cold. Jaren led them to a control room. Screens lit up as he entered a command code. Holograms appeared in the air, images of other planets, all destroyed. Then came the recordings, giant shadow-like creatures tearing through cities, eating energy, devouring metal and flesh. Jace watched in silence as one of the creatures turned toward the camera. Its eyes were black holes. Its body shimmered like liquid darkness. "They are called the Void Eaters," Jaren said. "They cannot be reasoned with. They do not stop. I thought Earth might be safe from them, but they've already found us." The room went quiet. No one moved. No one spoke. Jace's heart pounded in his chest. He had fought aliens. He had faced death. But this was something else. The creatures in the recordings weren't just invaders. They were monsters. Something out of a nightmare. "How long until they get here?" Jace asked. Jaren stared at the screen. "Days. Maybe less. I don't know for sure. But we need to prepare." Jace looked at his team. He saw the fear in their eyes. For the first time since the war began, he felt something heavy in his chest. Not anger, not rage, but the cold weight of dread. They had been fighting the wrong enemy all along. Still, he knew one thing for sure: humans didn't run. They had faced impossible odds before. They had survived destruction. And now, if another threat was coming, they would fight again, even if it killed them. Jace turned to Jaren. "If we're going to survive this, we need to work together. But if you betray us, if this is all some kind of trap, I'll make sure you regret it." Jaren nodded. "I won't betray you. I want to live too." Jace stepped back from the console. The image of the Void Eaters still burned into his mind. The war with Jaren had ended in a way no one expected. But a new war was coming. One that could wipe out everything. And this time, humans wouldn't be the only ones fighting for survival. The air inside the alien ship felt heavy. Jace stood in front of the large screen, watching the replay of the destruction again. The black creatures, the Void Eaters, were worse than anything he had ever seen. Their bodies moved like smoke but struck like lightning. They didn't just destroy buildings. They drained power, ripped through metal, and turned cities into dust. Worst of all, they didn't stop. Nothing slowed them down. Not weapons, not walls, not even space. Jace turned to Jaren, who stood silently at the edge of the room. The alien commander looked broken. Not like a leader, but like someone who had seen the end and survived. "Barely. Why didn't you warn us before?" Jace asked. Jaren didn't look up. "Because I didn't think you'd believe me. I thought you'd kill me before I could speak. And I was ashamed. I led the war. I killed your people. I knew you would never trust me." "You were right," Jace said coldly. "But we don't have time to argue anymore." Outside the ship, the wind howled through the ruins of the city. The human resistance was still holding a few strongholds, but barely. Most of Earth was already damaged by the war. Now they had days, maybe hours, before the real enemy arrived. There was no time to rebuild, no time to rest. Jace gathered his team in the ship's war room. Maps, satellite feeds, and communications flickered on the walls. Jaren stood to the side, unarmed, while the humans discussed their next steps. Some of the soldiers wanted to execute Jaren. They didn't care about his warnings. They had lost friends, family, and homes. Forgiveness wasn't easy. But Jace made the hard call. If we want to survive, we need his help. He knows these things. He knows how they fight. We use that knowledge. We don't have to like him, but we need him. Jaren spoke for the first time. "There may be one way. a weapon. We started building it years ago, after our first encounter with the Void Eaters. It wasn't finished. We didn't have enough energy to power it. But with the technology on this planet, it might work. What kind of weapon? Jace asked. Zarin walked to a panel and pulled up a blueprint. It showed a large tower, glowing with energy. We called it the Pulse. It releases a burst of high-frequency light and sound. The Void Eaters are made of living shadow. This weapon forces them into physical form. When they're solid, we can kill them. Jace studied the image. Where is it? In orbit, Jaren said. We built the core and sent it into space. It's hidden inside a broken satellite. My ship can reach it. And you want me to believe this thing will save us? It's our only chance, Jaren said quietly. I would not lie about this. If we don't try, Earth will fall, just like the others. Jace looked around the room. His team was tense. They didn't trust Jaren, but they trusted Jace, and right now, they needed a plan. We'll go, Jace said, but I'm coming with you, and if this is a trick, I'll make sure it's your last. Jaren nodded. Understood. That night, while most of the soldiers worked to repair gear and prepare defenses, Jace and Jaren boarded a shuttle from the alien ship. 2 soldiers joined them for backup. The shuttle lifted off in silence, breaking through the clouds and heading for space. The Earth below looked peaceful from above, but Jace knew better. Peace was an illusion. As they reached orbit, Jaren entered a code, and a hidden satellite opened up. Inside was the weapon, a glowing core, spinning slowly, humming with energy. The Pulse. It's beautiful, one of the soldiers said. It's dangerous, Jaren corrected. If it fails, it could tear open the sky. But if it works, we might live. Jace floated toward the core. What does it need to power up? Jaren pointed to a panel. Fusion energy. We have enough in my ship, but it will take time to transfer. And once it starts, it will attract them. The Void Eaters can sense this kind of power. Jace nodded. Then we better move fast. Back on Earth, the sky changed. It started as a shimmer, like heat rising off the ground. Then small black holes appeared in the clouds. The air grew cold. People across the planet looked up in fear. The first Void Eaters had arrived, and they were hungry. They dropped from the sky like shadows with wings. Cities screamed. Guns fired. Nothing worked. Bullets passed through them. Missiles exploded too early. The creatures moved through walls, killing without mercy. Jace received the news through his comlink. They're here, a voice said. They're tearing through the north. We're losing cities fast. Jace gritted his teeth. We need that weapon online now. The team worked fast. Jaren connected the core to the ship's fusion cells. The lights flickered. Alarms blared. The pulse started to hum louder, the glow pulsing like a heartbeat. They'll come here next, Jaren said. This power will draw them. Good, Jace said. Let them come. The Void Eaters arrived in space minutes later. They didn't fly like ships. They floated, crawled, twisted through space like living nightmares. The first one hit the shuttle's shield. The impact shook the whole craft. Another one followed, screeching as it tried to break inside. Jaren's hands flew across the controls. We're almost there. Just 30 more seconds. Jace fired at the creature outside. The blast lit up the sky, but it passed through the beast. This isn't working. Then the pulse activated. A blinding wave of light and sound burst from the core. The closest Void Eater screamed, its body twisting, turning solid. For the first time, Jace saw it clearly. A monstrous thing with claws, bones wrapped in shadow, and a mouth full of teeth like blades. Now, Jace shouted. He fired again. This time, the blast hit its chest. The creature exploded into dust. It worked, Jaren yelled. The pulse worked. But more were coming. Dozens, maybe hundreds, all drawn by the pulse. We can't hold them here, Jace said, "We need to move the weapon to Earth." Jaren shook his head. "If we move it now, it might shut down. It's too unstable." Jace looked out the window. The sky was full of creatures. His people were dying. Earth was burning. "Then we hold them here," he said. "We make this our last stand." Jaren stared at him. "You'll die." Jace gave a small smile. "Maybe. But so will they." Outside, the stars vanished as more shadows came. Jace and his team took positions, and the real war began. The battle in space had begun. All around the ship, the darkness was alive. Dozens of Void Eaters circled like vultures, trying to break through the shield. Jace stood near the glowing pulse, gripping his rifle. The weapon had worked once. It turned the creature into solid matter, and they killed it. But now, too many were coming. The pulse was strong, but it needed time between bursts, and time was the one thing they didn't have. Jaren worked fast, typing codes into the panel, trying to push more energy into the core. "I can increase the pulse speed," he said, "but it might overheat." "Do it," Jace ordered. "If we wait, we die anyway." The pulse glowed brighter. Its hum grew louder, shaking the walls. A second wave of light burst out, hitting 3 Void Eaters. They shrieked and twisted, turning solid. Jace didn't wait. He and his team fired everything they had. Explosions filled the sky. 2 creatures died screaming. The third one escaped, bleeding black smoke. But more came. The pulse drew them like fire draws moths. Shadows filled the stars. Some were as big as buildings. Others moved like worms through the dark. The shield shook again. Cracks formed in the glass. A warning alarm beeped on the control panel. "They're breaking through," one soldier shouted. "Fall back to the inner chamber," Jace yelled. "Protect the pulse at all costs." They moved quickly, locking doors behind them. The alien ship had been built for war, but not for this. The walls groaned as claws scraped the outside. A sudden smash. One of the Void Eaters punched through the hull and entered the ship. It was tall, taller than a tank, with long arms and sharp fingers. Its face had no eyes, just a mouth filled with teeth. It roared and lunged. Jace fired, but the bullets bounced off. The creature hadn't turned solid yet. "We need another pulse," he shouted. Jaren slammed the controls. The pulse fired a weak burst. The light hit the creature. It stumbled, slowed, then turned solid. Jace ran forward, fired a full clip into its chest. Black blood sprayed across the walls. The creature crashed to the floor, dead. 2 minutes until full power reset, Jaren said. "Then we can fire again." "That's too long," Jace growled. They had to hold out. More creatures entered, smashing through the walls. It became chaos. Guns roared. Flames burst. Smoke filled the hallways. Soldiers screamed. Jace was everywhere, shouting orders, pulling people out, shooting point blank at monsters. His arms burned. His chest hurt, but he didn't stop. Then he heard it, a sound deeper than thunder, a rumble that shook every bone in his body. The largest Void Eater had arrived. It tore through the outer wall, pulling pieces of the ship away like paper. It was huge, like a walking mountain, with long legs and 4 arms. Its body was made of swirling black mist, and in its chest was a red glow like fire. Jaren's face went pale. That one destroyed an entire planet by itself. It's the leader. Can the pulse stop it? Jace asked. Jaren didn't answer. That was all the answer Jace needed. They had one last option. "Turn the pulse into a bomb," Jace said. "Overload it." Jaren looked at him, shocked. "That would destroy the ship and us. But it might take all of them with it." Jaren hesitated. Then he nodded. "It's possible, but we need time to build the charge. 5 minutes. "I'll give you 5, Jace said. "Get to work." He turned to the others. We're not going to win this fight, but we can end it. We hold this ship. We keep the pulse safe, no matter what. The soldiers nodded. No one ran. No one complained. They knew this was the end, but they were ready. They had come too far to back down now. Jace grabbed his rifle and moved toward the entrance. Shadows filled the hallway. The creatures were getting closer. He stood tall, his heart steady. "This is for Earth," he whispered. The final stand began. Jace and the others fought like demons. They shot, stabbed, and burned anything that moved. The pulse glowed behind them, charging up brighter and brighter. Jaren worked at the panel, sweat pouring down his face. More Void Eaters stormed in. The big one roared, shaking the ship. It reached for the pulse with a massive claw. "Now," Jace screamed. Jaren hit the final button. The pulse exploded with light. A wave of energy ripped through the ship, then into space. The light tore through the Void Eaters, burning them from the inside. One by one, they screamed and vanished into dust. The biggest one roared as its body broke apart. Its red heart burst into flames, and it was gone. Silence. The light faded. The pulse was destroyed. The ship floated, broken but still holding together. Jace opened his eyes. He was lying on the floor, bleeding, coughing. Around him, the other survivors groaned and moved. They were alive. Jaren was still at the panel, slumped but breathing. Jace sat up slowly. Through the cracked window, he saw space. Empty. The Void Eaters were gone. They had done it. Earth was safe. For now. But Jace knew this was just the beginning. Something worse might come next. But for this moment, they had won. And sometimes, one victory was enough to light the fire again. The silence in space felt strange after the storm of battle. The pulse was gone, and the alien ship floated quietly above Earth, scared and broken. The great darkness that had once filled the stars was no longer there. The Void Eaters had vanished, destroyed by the final blast. But inside the ship, the survivors were still catching their breath. Jace sat on the cold metal floor, back against the wall, his arms bloody and shaking. Around him, his team was alive, but not unharmed. Some had burns, others broken bones. A few didn't move at all. Soldiers who had laughed during training, who had shared stories around fires, now lay still with empty eyes. The cost of victory was heavy. Jaren limped across the wreckage, holding his side. He had been burned by the blast, and his armor was cracked. But he still stood. He looked down at Jace, eyes full of something strange. Not pride, not joy. Maybe guilt, maybe respect. "You saved your planet," Jaren said quietly. Jace looked up at him. "We saved it. You helped." The alien looked away. "After what I did, I don't deserve thanks." Jace nodded. "Maybe not. But you fought at the end. That means something." For a moment, they said nothing. Just silence between enemies who had become something else. Not friends, but survivors of the same war. The broken ship slowly began to fall toward Earth. The engines were damaged. They couldn't stay in orbit much longer. Jaren worked quickly, helping the soldiers reach the escape pods. There were only a few left, not enough for everyone. Jace saw the numbers and frowned. "Too few pods," he muttered. "I'll stay," Jaren said. Jace looked at him. "Why?" "I've done enough damage. Let someone else live." Jace shook his head. "We all fought for survival. You made a choice. So did I. No one gets to choose who deserves to live." He stepped back and looked at his team. Then he made a decision. "I'm staying." The soldiers shouted, tried to stop him. But he raised a hand. "There's only one seat left," Jace said. "Give it to someone who has a future. Not me." "You're our leader," one of them cried. "I was," Jace said with a tired smile. "Now it's your turn." They knew he wouldn't change his mind. Jace had always been like this, strong, stubborn, and willing to die for others. The last pod launched, flying away from the falling ship. Inside were wounded soldiers, holding hands, whispering prayers. Below them, Earth waited, blue, green, full of hope again. Inside the ship, Jace stood with Jaren. The lights flickered. The ship shook harder. "Still want to stay?" Jaren asked. Jace nodded. "I started this fight. Feels right to end it here." Jaren smiled faintly. "You humans, you never stop surprising me." They walked to the window and looked down. Earth looked peaceful again. The sun was rising on the edge of the world. A new day. "You think they'll be okay down there?" Jaren asked. Jace nodded. "They will. We gave them a chance. That's all anyone needs." The ship groaned louder. Pieces began to break away. Fires spread through the walls. Jace sat down slowly, back against the cold glass, and closed his eyes. Jaren stood beside him, silent. The ship fell faster. And then, a bright light filled the sky as the ship entered the atmosphere. People across the planet looked up and saw it, a shooting star burning across the heavens. They didn't know it was a ship. They didn't know it carried heroes. But they made wishes anyway. And in those wishes was hope. Back on Earth, survivors began rebuilding. Cities cleared rubble. Flags were raised again. Stories of the battle spread, how the enemy had begged for mercy, and the human had only laughed. But those who knew the truth told a different story. They said the human didn't laugh out of cruelty, but out of courage. He had stared death in the face and said, "Not today." They said he fought not for revenge, but for peace. In time, Earth grew stronger. New leaders rose. New alliances formed. Humans learned from their pain, and they remembered the man who gave everything. His name was Jace, and even in death, he won. Because the human spirit cannot be broken. Not by war. Not by darkness. Not even by the end.